Welcome back to So What Does That Mean? The podcast where we break down engineering, planning, and construction in plain English. I'm Brendan, the engineer.
And I'm Joanne. If you're a developer, builder, homeowner, investor, or just someone trying to make sense of the construction world, you're in the right place.
Every episode, we take something that can cost people real time, real money, and real stress, and we unpack it in a way that actually makes sense.
No jargon walls, no lectures, just practical, common sense advice from people who see these issues every day. Brendan, today's topic is literally beneath everyone's feet. We're talking about the ground your house sits on and how it moves.
The dirt, the bit nobody thinks about, nobody can see, and nobody gets excited about, right up until the day a crack comes running up the wall and a door stops closing.
And this is one of the biggest causes of damage in Australian homes, isn't it?
It's one of the leading causes of building defects in the country. Cracked brickwork, sticking doors, cracks creeping across ceilings, floors that feel slightly off. A huge share of those complaints across Queensland and New South Wales come back to one thing: reactive clay soil under a house that wasn't designed to cope with it.
Reactive soil. Explain that like I've never heard the term.
Reactive clay is soil that swells up when it gets wet and shrinks back when it dries out. It literally changes size with the seasons. Picture a sponge under your house. It expands after rain, contracts in the drought, and your house has to ride on top of that movement year after year.
And Australia has a lot of it?
Some of the most reactive clays on the planet. It's right across southeast Queensland, Western Sydney, the Melbourne Fringe, Adelaide, Canberra. If you're in a newer estate on the edge of a growth city, there's a very good chance you're sitting on reactive clay.
Give me a sense of scale. We're not talking about the houses sliding down a hill. How much movement are we talking about?
There's an Australian standard for this, AS 2870, and it grades sites from Class A, basically stable rock or sand, all the way up to Class E, extremely reactive, and Class P, problem sites. The classification predicts how much the surface will move between bone dry and fully wet.
And in real millimeters?
On a highly reactive site, the ground can move more than 75 millimeters vertically between the wet and the dry. That's the better part of 8 centimeters of vertical movement up and down under your house every year. Now imagine that movement isn't even across the site, which it never is.
So one corner lifts while another stays put.
That's the killer. Differential movement. If the whole house lifted evenly, you'd never notice. But one corner sits in shade and one stays damp. Another bakes in the sun and dries out. A leaking pipe wets one spot. A big tree sucks moisture out of another. So different parts move different amounts, and that twisting force is what cracks the slab and bends the walls.
And the cracks show up where the building is the weakest.
Exactly. Mortar joints, the corners of windows and doors, wall junctions, those step cracks in the brickwork, and the diagonal cracks above a doorway aren't random. They're the building telling you the ground underneath isn't sitting still.
You used the phrase earlier, slab heave. That sounds expensive.
It's the one that ends up in court. Slab heave is when reactive soil pushes the slab upward unevenly, the edges or the center lift. Edge heave is when the perimeter swells and lifts. Center heave is the reverse. Either way, the slab is being bent by the ground and everything built on it gets distorted.
What sets it off?
Moisture change, almost always. A leaking water pipe under one part of the slab, a drought followed by heavy rain, poor drainage letting water pool against one edge, a big thirsty tree pulling moisture out of the soil on one side, irrigation on a garden bed up close to the house. It's all about uneven wetting and drying.
Trees, are they a bigger deal than people think?
Way bigger. A mature tree can dry out the soil in a cone that reaches 3 to 5 times its canopy radius. So a big gum that looks like it's a safe distance away can be quietly drinking the moisture out from under your footings. Then it rains, the soil swells back, and the movement begins.
When is a crack just a crack? And when is it a warning sign?
As a rough rule of thumb, fine hairline cracks under a couple of millimeters are usually cosmetic. but diagonal cracks wider than about 5 millimeters, big step cracks in the brickwork, cracks that are getting wider over time, doors and windows that suddenly jam, or floors that start to slope. Those say, get this looked at. Movement that's active and getting worse is the thing you don't ignore.
Okay, so this is where it gets messy, isn't it? When a new house starts cracking, everyone points to everyone else.
It's a genuine circular firing squad. The builder blames the owner for not maintaining drainage. The engineer points at the drainage too. The plumber says the stormwater was connected properly. The geotechnical engineer says it's just reactive soil doing what reactive soil does. And the owner is standing there with a cracking house and no clear answer.
So, how do you actually untangle all of that?
You stop looking only at the slab. A slab crack is a symptom. The real questions are, was the site classified correctly before the design? Was the footing designed for that classification? Was it built to the design? Was the drainage designed, installed, and maintained? Did something change the moisture? A leak, a tree, irrigation? You investigate the system, not just the crack.
And that needs a particular kind of expertise?
It often needs someone who can sit across all of it: structural, geotechnical, drainage, civil, and work out what actually happened. That's the value of having engineering and the whole of site view in one place, rather than 4 separate specialists each defending their own corner.
So let's flip to prevention. How do you stop this before a slab is even poured?
It starts with a soil test, the geotechnical site investigation. Before you design a footing, a geotechnical engineer should classify the site under AS 2870. Boreholes, lab tests, working out how reactive the ground is and how much it'll move. That classification is the foundation of every decision that follows.
And skipping that is where it all goes wrong?
Constantly. If a builder hands you a standard slab quote without a site-specific soil report behind it, be wary, because the right slab for a highly reactive site needs more steel, deeper beams, more concrete. A standard slab on a reactive site is thousands of dollars of strengthening that simply isn't there. You don't see what's missing until the cracks appear.
So the footing has to match the soil type.
Right. On a reactive site, you choose the footing system deliberately: a stiffened raft, a waffle pod system, deep edge beams, board piers, or screw piles, depending on the ground. Point is, the footing is engineered to resist the movement the soil is going to throw at it. That's structural design doing its job.
And the other half is water?
The other half is moisture management, and it's the bit everyone forgets. The whole AS 2870 system assumes the drainage and landscaping keep the soil moisture reasonably stable. But drainage is the first thing that gets value engineered out or never finished properly. The footing resists movement. The drainage reduces how much movement happens in the first place. They have to work together, and far too often, only half the job gets done.
So if someone's listening and their walls are cracking right now, tell them what should they do?
First, don't just patch and paint. Filling a crack that's caused by active movement is treating the symptom. It'll come back, usually worse. You need to understand why it's moving before you fix what moved.
Second?
Get it assessed properly, structurally and, if needed, geotechnically. Find out whether the movement is active and ongoing or whether it's stabilized. That changes everything about the fix.
Third?
Look for the moisture cause first, because it's often the cheapest fix. A leaking pipe, a blocked drain, water pooling against a slab, a downpipe discharging right next to the footing, a tree in the wrong spot. Sometimes fixing the water source lets the soil settle back and the movement stops.
So the dramatic structural fix isn't always the answer.
Not always. Sometimes it's underpinning or piering, and that's the real money. But sometimes it's drainage and moisture control. You only know which after a proper assessment. which is exactly why you don't want a quote for a $60,000 fix from someone who hasn't worked out the cause. Some practical takeaways. 1. Reactive clay soil, ground that swells and shrinks with moisture, is one of the biggest causes of home damage in Australia, and most of us live on it.
2. On highly reactive sites, the ground can move more than 75 mil in a year, and that's the uneven movement that cracks houses.
3. Moisture change is the trigger. Leaks, drainage, trees, and irrigation. So managing water is half the battle.
4. Never accept a standard slab without a site-specific soil classification. The right footing depends on the ground.
5. Footing design and drainage have to work together. Doing only one is doing half the job.
6. If your house is already cracking, find the cause before the fix. Sometimes it's water, not a $60,000 structural job. Have you dealt with cracking, sticking doors, or a sloping floor in a newish home? Did anyone ever explain why?
Tell us on YouTube or through JCE. And if you're building on a reactive site or you're not sure what you're building on, that soil report is the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy. Almost nobody chooses a house because of the dirt underneath it, but the dirt decides whether the house cracks or stays sound for decades.
And the ground is going to move whether you plan for it or not.
So you either design for the movement, the right footing, the right drainage, or you pay for it later in cracks, disputes, and repairs. Working with the ground is always cheaper than fighting it.
If this episode made you look at the crack in your wall differently, share it with someone who's building or worried about movement in their home. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and connect with us on LinkedIn.
And as always, if you've got a topic, a question, or a building headache you want us to unpack, send it through to JCE. We genuinely enjoy this stuff.
Thanks for listening.
See you on the next one.